Well, yeah, I've been a naughty boy, yeah. A couple of things that I did, affairs came out, in the newspaper, and she beat me up one night.
And fair enough, too.
Exactly.
You deserved it.
She said, look, as long as you come home to me, you know what I mean? As long as you don't go running off with somebody. I said, that'll never happen.
At 85, Tom Jones finally reveals the truth about the most scandalous affairs that nearly destroyed his 59-year marriage and left a trail of broken hearts across 2 continents.
It's just confessing that I have, been traveling and, and enjoying life. And but the road always leads back to Linda.
While his wife Linda waited at home, Jones was bedding up to 250 women a year.
He didn't ask a lot of questions, and I said, don't ask questions and I won't tell you no lies,
So let's get into the 10 most scandalous mistresses who nearly brought down the marriage that defined Tom Jones's life. Tommy Woodward from Pontypridd, Wales, married his teenage sweetheart, Linda Trenchard, when they were both just 16 years old. They lived 600 feet apart in their Welsh hometown, 2 kids dreaming of getting out of their working-class life. Nobody could have predicted what fame would do to their simple love story. When It's Not Unusual exploded worldwide in 1965, Tom Jones wasn't just selling records, he was selling pure sex.
It's not unusual to have fun with anyone. But when I see you hanging about.
His tight pants, gyrating hips, and raw masculinity drove women completely wild. They didn't just listen to Tom Jones, they threw themselves at him. The sweat that dripped from his elbows during performances became legendary. Front row audiences came prepared to get splashed as he gyrated and sang his way through hits that made women faint and scream. This wasn't just entertainment, it was sexual theater. The rules of their marriage got set up early. Linda would stay home with their son Mark while Tom toured the world. What started as a practical arrangement became something much darker, a system that let Tom cheat for nearly 60 years. Linda came up with her own survival strategy. Don't ask questions, don't get answers. She didn't want to know about the women, and Tom didn't volunteer information. This twisted deal kept their marriage together while Tom destroyed everything else. While his voice soared through love songs, Jones was betraying every promise he'd ever made to Linda. The teenage boy who swore to love her forever was turning into a predator. He would later brag about sleeping with 250 women a year at his peak. That's not promiscuity, that's compulsion. The foundation was set. Linda would suffer in silence while Tom conquered the world, one woman at a time. Every affair would test their arrangement, but somehow their marriage would survive what should have destroyed it. The question is, at what cost? Before interracial relationships were accepted in America, Tom Jones was already breaking every rule with Mary Wilson of the Supremes. This wasn't just another affair, it was dangerous territory that could have destroyed one of Motown's biggest acts and ended both their careers. Mary Wilson was riding high when she met the Welsh superstar in the late 1960s. The Supremes owned America with hits like Where Did Our Love Go and Stop, In the Name of Love. Wilson was one of the most famous faces in music, but behind all those sequined gowns and perfect performances, she couldn't resist Tom's raw magnetism. Their secret affair lasted 2 years. They met in hidden hotel rooms and private clubs across America and Europe, always careful, always watching over their shoulders. Wilson later said Tom was irresistible. He made her feel like the only woman alive when they were together. The timing made everything worse. Wilson was dealing with drama inside the Supremes, where Diana Ross was becoming the clear star while Mary and Florence Ballard got pushed to the background. Tom's affair gave her an escape from all the Motown politics and tension. For Tom, this relationship was different. Friends noticed he talked about Mary differently than his other women. There was real affection there. not just his usual dismissive attitude. That made it more dangerous for his marriage. The secrecy was intense. They used go-betweens to set up meetings, elaborate schemes to avoid being seen together. The stakes were huge. Wilson could lose everything in an industry just starting to accept mixed relationships, while Jones risked his family man image. The affair eventually ended when their careers demanded everything. But it set up Tom's pattern for life. He could have deep emotional connections with other women while staying married to Linda. He learned to compartmentalize his heart, keeping his marriage separate from his affairs. This relationship with Wilson proved that Tom's cheating wasn't always just physical. Sometimes he actually cared about these women, which made his betrayals even more devastating for everyone involved. No affair in Tom Jones's long list of conquests created bigger headlines than his relationship with Marjorie Wallace, the first American Miss World. Their passion didn't just cost Wallace her crown, it led to tragedy, overdoses, and a scandal that shocked the entire world. Marjorie Wallace was only 20 when she made history winning Miss World in 1973, beating 53 other women at London's Royal Albert Hall.
Miss World 1973 is Miss United States of America.
That crown meant everything: fame, money, opportunities that could last forever. Within months, Tom Jones would destroy it all. The affair started in December 1973, when Wallace met Jones backstage at the London Palladium. Witnesses said the attraction was instant and overwhelming. Tom was famous for seducing women with just a look, but Wallace captivated him right back. They left together that night for the Westbury Hotel, starting a relationship that would dominate headlines for months. Here's what made it so scandalous. Wallace was engaged to American race car driver Peter Revson, a relationship that was already international news. Wallace was juggling two high-profile men at once, creating a love triangle the media couldn't stop covering. Tom was equally obsessed with Wallace. He told friends she was different from his other conquests. He even bought matching bracelets for Wallace and his wife, Linda. Their birthdays were just days apart. The fact that he gave identical gifts to his wife and mistress shows how twisted his thinking had become.
It's quite clear to me reading this that she was the person you have always loved and continue to love.
Yeah.
The scandal exploded when photographers caught Tom and Wallace kissing on a beach in Barbados during a Miss World TV special. Those pictures were proof nobody could deny. Wallace's contract specifically banned romantic relationships that could damage Miss World's reputation. She was supposed to be engaged to Revson, making her affair with Tom both professionally and personally wrong. The media went crazy. Here was Miss World, supposedly the picture of innocence and morality, caught cheating on her fiancé with a married man. The pageant officials were furious. They'd never dealt with anything like this before. The Marjorie Wallace scandal took a tragic turn that nobody saw coming. In March 1974, Peter Revson was killed in a crash during practice for the South African Grand Prix. He died wearing a gold locket Wallace had given him, engraved with, "If not for you." The irony was devastating. Revson died believing he was engaged to a woman who was cheating on him with Tom Jones. Wallace's world collapsed completely. First, she lost her Miss World crown, the first winner in pageant history to be stripped of the title due to scandal. Her modeling contracts disappeared overnight. Her reputation was destroyed. She went from America's sweetheart to public disgrace in weeks. The guilt over Revson's death crushed her. Wallace blamed herself for the crash, thinking her betrayal somehow caused his death. The psychological weight of losing both her career and the man who loved her became unbearable. On June 5, 1974, Wallace was found unconscious in her Indianapolis apartment after overdosing on sleeping pills. She later claimed it wasn't a suicide attempt, but the timing told a different story. The combination of grief, scandal, and public humiliation had pushed her over the edge. The most telling part of this whole mess was Tom's reaction to Wallace's overdose. Despite performing in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace, he immediately sent flowers to her hospital room. When he heard the news on his car radio, witnesses said he was visibly shaken and took it harder than anyone expected. This reaction proved his feelings for Wallace were real and deep. It wasn't just another casual encounter. Tom was genuinely affected by her suffering, but he still refused to take responsibility for his role in destroying her life. The Wallace affair showed what happened when women got too close to Tom Jones. They didn't just lose him, they lost everything. Wallace eventually recovered and rebuilt her life, but the scandal changed her forever. It became a warning about the dangers of falling for the Welsh superstar's charm. For Tom, it was a preview of the wreckage he would leave behind for decades to come. Charlotte Laws was just 18 when she started a 3-year relationship with Tom Jones in the mid-1970s. Unlike his other affairs, this one lasted long enough for Laws to see behind the charm and document everything in explosive detail in her memoir years later. Laws was working as a television presenter when she first met Tom. At 18, she was naive and completely unprepared for the attention of one of the world's biggest stars. Like so many young women before her, she got swept up in the fantasy of being desired by Tom Jones.
Get through the front gate. I just looked at the guard and I smiled and I waved like I was supposed to be here, and he just waved back and I...
The 3-year timeline made this one of Tom's longest affairs, suggesting his feelings went deeper than his usual quick conquests. Laws described the relationship as intense and passionate. Tom gave her experiences and opportunities her young life had never offered before. But Law's memoir revealed the darker side of how Tom operated with his younger conquests. She wrote about the psychological games he played to keep his affairs going while protecting his marriage. He made each woman feel special and unique while making sure none of them could threaten his relationship with Linda. Laws documented the gifts Tom showered on his mistresses: jewelry, trips, experiences designed to create emotional dependency and buy their silence. She described how he used his fame and wealth to create a fantasy bubble that made it easy for young women to ignore the reality of their situation. The memoir showed Tom's ability to make his affairs feel romantic and meaningful, rather than exploitative. Laws wrote about feeling genuinely loved during their time together, only later recognizing how calculated his behavior really was. The most damaging revelation was how the relationship ended. Instead of the gentle conclusion you'd expect from someone who genuinely cared, Laws described a cold and abrupt termination that left her feeling used and thrown away. The 3-year affair also coincided with some of Tom's most successful years professionally, showing his ability to maintain complex emotional relationships while focusing on his career. Law's memoir provided insight into the logistics of conducting long-term affairs while married, the network of assistants, drivers, and enablers who made Tom's double life possible. Her decision to write about the relationship decades later reflected both her need to tell her story and her recognition that Tom's behavior had lasting effects on the women who got involved with him. Cassandra Peterson's story reveals the darkest side of Tom Jones's sexual appetite. The woman who would become beloved as Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, waited until 2021 to reveal in her memoir that losing her virginity to Tom Jones was not a romantic conquest, but a traumatic experience that scarred her for life.
I mean, it's kind of scary. Actually, I'm sort of revealing it right now. I haven't talked to anybody about it, you know?
Peterson was just 18 and working as a showgirl in Las Vegas when she encountered Jones in the early 1970s. She was naive about the entertainment industry and the powerful men who controlled it. The teenager who would later become a cult icon had no idea what she was walking into. In her memoir, Peterson revealed that Tom Jones was her first sexual experience, making it especially significant in shaping how she understood intimacy and relationships. But instead of the passionate seduction his image suggested, Peterson called the encounter traumatic. The revelation that Peterson lost her virginity to Jones in what she described as a traumatic experience raises serious questions about how he treated young women. The power imbalance between an 18-year-old showgirl and an international superstar was enormous, creating a situation where real consent becomes questionable. Peterson's willingness to speak publicly about this experience decades later took incredible courage. Her decision to include these details in her memoir suggests the impact was significant enough to risk the potential backlash from revealing such intimate details. The timing of Peterson's encounter with Jones is especially significant because it happened while he was building his reputation as a sex symbol. The image of women throwing underwear at him and fainting during performances was being carefully created by his management. But Peterson's account suggests the reality was far less romantic and potentially more predatory than the public knew. What makes Peterson's story even more disturbing is how it contrasts with Tom's public image as a charming, respectful entertainer. Her description suggests a different reality, one where young women were seen as conquests rather than people deserving respect. Peterson's story raises questions about how many other young women had similar experiences that were never reported. Her fame gave her a platform to speak out, but countless others may not have had the same opportunity or courage. The fact that Peterson became successful on her own, creating the beloved Elvira character, shows her resilience in overcoming early trauma. But her willingness to discuss the encounter decades later suggests its impact never fully disappeared. While most of Tom Jones's affairs ended quietly with generous payoffs and signed agreements, his 1987 encounter with Korean-American model Katherine Berkery created a legal nightmare that haunted him for decades. This wasn't just another conquest. It was a 3-day affair that produced a son and exposed Tom's true character when faced with real responsibility.
The rest of it is part of life. It's not what got you there. It's not what is the real person.
Katherine Berkery was 24 and modeling in New York when she met 47-year-old Tom during his American tour in October 1987. Born in Korea and adopted by a wealthy New Jersey family, Berkery had built a successful modeling career and was working at Regine's nightclub when their paths crossed. The relationship started typically for Tom: instant attraction, a passionate encounter at a Manhattan hotel. Berkery later described being swept away by Tom's charisma and star power, caught up in the fantasy of being desired by one of the world's most famous entertainers.
She was a fan of mine, and she's been a fan of mine, and she said, I don't want to be in that audience watching those people throwing things at you because I know how they feel.
The fairy tale ended when Berkery discovered she was pregnant. Unlike his other affairs, this one had created a permanent consequence that couldn't be dismissed or forgotten. When Berkery contacted Tom to tell him about the pregnancy, his response revealed his true character. He flatly denied paternity and refused any responsibility for the child. Berkery's decision to fight back through the courts marked a turning point in how Tom's affairs were handled. Previous relationships had ended with private settlements and non-disclosure agreements, but Berkery refused to be silenced or bought off. In 1989, she filed a paternity suit in Manhattan family court. The legal battle revealed how calculating Tom was about his affairs. He initially denied ever meeting Berkery, then claimed their encounter was too brief to result in pregnancy, then argued she'd been with other men. These denials continued even after DNA testing proved with 99.76% certainty that he was the father. Judge Judith Sheindlin, later TV's Judge Judy, ordered Tom to pay $1,700 per month in child support until Jonathan turned 18. The court also required him to pay Berkery's legal fees and medical expenses, totaling nearly $130,000. But beyond the money, what made this case particularly damaging was Tom's continued refusal to acknowledge his son emotionally. While he paid what the court ordered, he never tried to build a relationship with Jonathan. This cold rejection revealed a callous side that contradicted his warm public image. Jonathan Berkery has spent his entire life dealing with his father's rejection. He struggled with addiction, homelessness, and identity issues, often performing on street corners, singing his father's songs while holding signs asking for money.
I saw the flickering shadows of love on a blind.
The tragic path of Jonathan's life serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of Tom's refusal to accept responsibility. In recent years, Tom Jones has been linked romantically with Elvis Presley's former wife, Priscilla Presley, creating one of the most controversial relationships in his extensive romantic history. While both deny a romantic relationship, the persistent rumors and their close friendship have fueled speculation about whether the king's widow became another conquest. The connection makes perfect sense given their shared entertainment industry history and mutual connection to Elvis. Tom and Elvis were close friends during both their careers, often performing in Las Vegas and sharing similar lifestyles that included extravagant living and complicated relationships. After Elvis died in 1977, Tom maintained a friendship with Priscilla that has lasted decades. Their relationship has been the subject of intense media speculation, especially given Tom's reputation and Priscilla's status as one of entertainment's most famous widows. The rumors gained steam when they were frequently seen together at social events.
Tom and I have been friends since '68, it is true. That's not the first time we've been out, obviously, but probably the first outing in public. But always friendship, always friends, and he's a great guy. And
if the rumors are true, it would mean Tom pursued a romantic relationship with the widow of one of his closest friends. The betrayal would be both personal and professional, violating the unspoken loyalty that typically exists between entertainers of their stature. Priscilla's denials have been consistent but carefully worded, leaving room for interpretation about their true connection. She's described Tom as a close friend and confidant, someone who provided support during difficult periods following Elvis's death. Tom has been similarly evasive about their relationship, neither confirming nor completely denying the romantic rumors. His typical pattern with women suggests that, if given the opportunity, he would certainly have pursued Priscilla romantically, regardless of his friendship with Elvis. In any case, while Tom Jones conquered hearts and bedrooms worldwide, the most complex relationship was happening at home with Linda, whose strategy of willful ignorance enabled decades of infidelity while preserving a marriage that lasted 59 years. Her approach revealed a woman trapped between love, practicality, and the impossible reality of being married to a global sex symbol. Linda Trenchard met Tom when they were teenagers in Pontypridd, living just 600 feet apart. They married at 16 before his career began and before anyone could predict the temptations fame would bring. This early foundation created a bond strong enough to withstand decades of betrayal and public humiliation. The unofficial policy governing their marriage was brutally simple. Linda didn't ask questions, and Tom didn't volunteer information. This arrangement let both maintain the fiction that his affairs were temporary lapses rather than a fundamental part of who he was. Linda's willful blindness enabled Tom's behavior while protecting her from the full emotional impact. According to Tom, Linda understood early that his profession would bring temptations most marriages never face. She allegedly told him that as long as he came home to her, she could tolerate his wandering. This deal reflected Linda's understanding of the entertainment industry and her determination to preserve their relationship despite its complications. But the policy wasn't entirely successful in protecting Linda from pain. When she discovered Tom's affair with Marjorie Wallace, her reaction was swift and physical. According to Tom, Linda chinned him, punching and shouting like never before. This outburst showed that her calm acceptance was just an act covering years of hurt.
She said, look, as long as you come home to me, You know what I mean? As long as you don't go running off with somebody. I said, that'll never happen. So.
Why did Linda stay? She could have divorced him and taken half his money, but she stuck around. Divorce meant giving up the lifestyle his success provided, losing her status as a superstar's wife, and facing an uncertain future. Linda chose to stay because the benefits outweighed the costs. At least, that's what she told herself. The most telling aspect of their relationship was Linda's refusal to travel with Tom or attend most of his performances. While this absence enabled his affairs by removing potential awkward encounters, it also protected Linda from witnessing the full extent of his behavior. Linda's isolation became more pronounced as Tom's career flourished. She spent years alone in their homes while he toured the world, building relationships with other women that sometimes lasted longer than most people's marriages. Her willingness to accept this separation showed either remarkable tolerance or emotional resignation. The tragedy of Linda's position was that preserving her marriage required her to disappear from Tom's public life. While he performed for adoring crowds and romanced beautiful women, she remained hidden, maintaining the home base he returned to between adventures. Linda's death in 2016 from lung cancer marked the end of the most important relationship in Tom's life and forced him to confront the true cost of his behavior. Her final illness revealed what he'd always known but ignored. Linda was the constant in his life, the foundation that made everything else possible. At 85, Tom Jones has finally revealed the truth about his most scandalous affairs. But the question remains whether confession alone can provide redemption for a lifetime of betrayal. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.